This session is programmed in collaboration with the Wellcome Trust, who fund and research to improve human health. They don't only fund academics and researchers, they also fund creative people. And so without further ado, I'd love to introduce our panel session today, Digging Deeper Notes on Blindness. It's hosted by comedian Chella Quint. We have co-producers Mike, Brett and Jo-Jo Ellison. I can see that Alex Usborne, the other co-producer, is in the room. And we have a 30-minute session. There'll be an opportunity to ask questions about the fantastic film and VR experience that is Notes on Blindness. So, Chella, over to you.
Hello, thanks, Arinma. That's fantastic. Can you guys all hear me okay? If you can't hear me, if you can see somebody near you and they're looking like, oh man, I wish the sound were slightly different for any of us, please tell us, because the room goes further back, and apparently there are headphones for people right at the back who really want to hear. But do just move up. There's a couple of seats that we were just sitting in chatting about what we were going to chat about just a minute ago. So come closer if you like. Hello. I'm just going to introduce, we have Jo-Jo Ellison here and Mike Brett. They're both producers from Archer's Mark. And Alex Osborne's out there from 104 Films. Hey, Alex, come on up if you want, man. We can mic share. No, fine. All right. He was like, no, I'm going to leave it with you. It's cool. And I'm really excited about this session and about seeing the film, Notes on Blindness, because I haven't seen it yet. And usually they give you a little copy to preview. And I didn't get to see it until, well, I thought I was going to get to see it this afternoon, and I didn't get to. No. I didn't. We can just say it was my fault. It's fine. But I didn't get to see it. And so actually, I'm in the same position as all of you guys, because it's on this evening. It's on at 6 p.m. tonight. But what I have done is gone and experienced the VR version of the film, the companion piece, and I've seen this very cool short film that won an Emmy when it was made. Was it 2014?
Yeah.
So we're going to talk a little bit about that and how the film went from what its original form 30 years ago to what it is now. So
feels like that sometimes.
Yeah, let's. So do you want to just take us through the beginning of the process, Mike?
Absolutely, and also just we have actually got the trailer for the feature, if that would be good context. But you could just press the button anytime you like.
Ooh, okay, I have no button, but I can say, please press the button. Is that right? Okay, cool. That's awesome. Why don't you tell us what we're gonna see, and then we'll say it.
Sorry, do you want me to explain the film, the concept of the film, where it came from? Okay, so Notes of Blindness, I guess, was actually born really 5 years ago when Peter Middleton and James Spinney, our directors, were researching a project about blindness, and they were pointed in the direction of John Hull, who'd written this incredible book called Touching the Rock. And it was very famous. Oliver Sacks called it a masterpiece on the experience of blindness. And when they got to know John and his wife Marilyn, who have both been just incredible partners on this film, John sort of let slip that the book was actually based on these tapes, these audio diaries that he'd kept during his experience of blindness in the 80s. Now, when the boys asked if they could have a look, he kind of wheeled out from the attic 16 hours, I think it was, of audio diaries, and that's when the work really began. And so the guys started dredging through this, looking for these moments that would enable them to tell the story of John. And I think that they also realised that there was instantly they realised that there was a feature film there. But what they did do was they started with a short film called Rainfall, which was based on John's understanding of acoustic space and his wish that it could rain inside in order to understand the space around him, which won at Hot Doc's Best Short years ago, 2013. Off the back of that, we were able then to create another short film in partnership with the New York Times, which ended up winning an Emmy. And all the time we've been building towards creating this feature film, and that is what you will be seeing tonight.
And we can show a clip of that right now. So let's press the button. Oh no!
We're really teasing you today.
Yeah, you really are. I'm not. Come on, I just want to see it. What I really like about this project is its similarity to the narrative of how Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was created. Stay with me. And those of you that are big fans of Douglas Adams, this film exists in so many formats that you can access it in as many ways as you like. And the beauty I have found in this is that it's great in every single format. It's fun no matter how much of the story you already know or how much of the dialogue you've already heard. Every time I see that that giant tape recorder, or hear that click of stop, or put on the VR headset, I get more from it. And so if you like the opportunity of things like having the audio and having a short and having a feature film and reading a book and hearing the tapes, like I want a game. I would like a game, please. Definitely would like some merch, like a T-shirt or something, or a badge. The whole, yeah. But what's incredible about the newest version of it is that you had the audio, but this is a story from a long time ago. So, people age, time changes, time moves on. And so you wanted to portray the younger, actors going through this. So the reenactments are faithful, completely faithful to it. And to the point where you've lip synced the voices. Can you talk about how that worked? Jo-Jo, you did a lot of the technical stuff, right?
Yeah, well,
so
yeah.
Talk to us about that, please.
So the film is documentary, completely kind of audio, in the audio sense, and then everything that's on screen is drama. So we've got actors come in and they lip sync along to John Hull's voice and Marilyn's voice, and actually some of the little kids who magically were able to lip sync on the day, which was incredible. And it was quite an interesting process, but it was brilliant in terms of kind of production, in that I didn't have any sound men, no one there delaying because we had planes or trains or whatnot. It was great. We could.
So you didn't have like people like the way Benedict Cumberbatch did Smaug. You didn't have like loads of CGI people syncing with the. Really, you just had people just moving their mouths at the right time.
Yeah. So essentially, rather than as well as giving the scripts to all the cast, they'd receive audio tapes with kind of pips that led up to the bits that they were meant to be saying. So they'd listen to those and practice and kind of work out what they had to say, but also kind of the movement of John's mouth and kind of his breathing. He's an asthmatic as well, so making sure he was lip syncing to everything that he did. Yeah,
that sounds really detail oriented for something. But the effect visually is great, because I've actually seen a longer trailer about a month ago that had more of the conversation in it, and Marilyn's on that.
I think you forget, don't you? We haven't adjusted the tapes at all, so it's still very these are recorded into old cassettes and they sound awful, but they sound great. But you get used to it and you kind of. You don't notice it, do you?
I think the thing is about those voices is that they take you into those moments, into those characters, and that's what great documentary does. A lot of people would say, well, look, actually, you shot all of these as almost as recreations, but we see it as kind of embedding documentary audio into that world. And also, obviously, when you're trying to investigate and show a subject's experience of blindness as well, you have to be able to decide where you put the camera in order to do that. So, but I think what's amazing is that people meet Dan and Simone, are amazing actors, after screenings, and they don't have John and Marilyn's voice, so they just can't quite process what's going on there.
I didn't even think of that. Wow, yeah.
Or in fact, Marilyn comes up and does a Q&A, and everyone is trying to identify this lady on stage with Simone, who's obviously been acting her sort of 30 years previously.
Right, yeah.
So it's a bit of a sort of synesthetic kind of thing going on there.
Yeah, you said synesthetic. I felt the VR was like that. It was amazing to be able to see. And does anybody just nod or wave or something if you've tried out the VR stuff over in Sight Gallery? Yes. Awesome, fantastic, great. I highly recommend it. It's really hard to get in there, but it is worth the queue for this activity. You can see sound. It's visualized in these sort of kind of electromagnetic visual light blue pulses in the shapes of the things you'd be able to hear, almost like you're a bat. And it's really beautiful. And and then when you see sort of the actual visuals in the short or in the film, these are the sort of audio bluified versions of the actual shots of the film. So when you see them later, you're like, oh, that. And so even though if you're not blind, you can't compare the two really, it kind of gives you a real sense of, oh, this is what you would be seeing, and this is how it feels to hear this.
Yeah. I mean, so when you're doing the VR, essentially, the sounds make the surroundings come to life. So footsteps, you'll see little blue dots. I find it very difficult to describe. Kind of appear where sounds, where footsteps would be happening, or wind in the trees would bring a tree to life. which is...
I guess, yeah. I mean, I'm actually going to shout out Arte France here because they were amazing partners on this film, but they are very forward-thinking in terms of looking for interactive companion pieces, and I think there's no better project really for that than something which is so sound-led. And one of the things we always wanted to do was, it actually started as being purely sound-led. There was no visual analogue at all to what it was that you were hearing. And what we realised that actually a lot of sighted audiences just completely disconnected. They needed some sort of visual stimulus.
Yeah,
so the guys there, Arnaud and Anne-Marie and the guys over in Paris who worked very closely with Peter and James on this, they looked at how you can map acoustic space by linking light to sound, essentially. And that's how these worlds get built. But what was really exciting as well was that the VR was an opportunity to use material from John's book that you simply could not put into a film. You could not recreate. You had to feel it. You couldn't just witness it. And I think that's why there's such a nice companion project.
The church bells sort of ringing now at the exact appropriate moment when you brought that up. There's this brilliant bit in the VR where you it doesn't really occur to you to look up while you're viewing it, but I recommend that you look up, especially in a bit where you walk into a church and you look up and you can see the apse of the church and the ceiling and the vaulted ceiling kind of just about sort of glimmers into existence when you look up and when you look around. And it's about hearing a choir and John's experience of hearing the choir and not necessarily needing to see the choir.
I think that's really important actually because one of the, spoiler alert a little bit, but part of John's experience of blindness was obviously coming to terms with it and entering what he called a world beyond sight and a different kind of perception rather than a reduced perception by losing his sight. And I think one of the things that VR does really well is it starts by explaining to you how acoustic space is mapped in a practical sense, and at the end of it, he completely gives way and says, I don't need my sight anymore to experience this choir, and you go on that journey with him.
Yeah, and there's elements of the journey that evoke different emotions, and I think the VR activity does that really, really well. In the film, I wondered about, he's very self-pitying at parts of this journey, and at the end of the VR, he sort of says he wasn't anymore. It sort of started that way, but he wasn't, but that reliving the experience of making the film kind of brought up some of the old feelings of how he felt coming to terms with going blind. I mean, obviously, from a disability perspective, disability representation is not about pitying disabled people. It's really irritating, and people don't like it. But I think there's a difference he experiences of being blind, being born blind, going blind, and being perceived as someone blind. And this is very much his personal journey. But what was it like for him reflecting on the start of that so many years later?
We need Pete and James here for that. I mean, I think the whole Hull family embraced it, the process of making the film, and really, I think even now, John sadly passed away kind of midway through the shoot last year, which was very, very sad. But him and his wife Marilyn, who's here at the festival, have really embraced it. And what John did was he used his diaries as a way to kind of release all his emotions and tell his story of going blind without having to burden his family on this process. So I think that it was actually quite insightful for Marilyn and his children who hadn't sat through all the tapes, so it didn't really have a good understanding. So I think it was a way that they could all together experience it, and it really gave him a new lease of life. He'd not travelled. A big part of the film is him travelling to Australia, which is incredibly difficult for him, and he hadn't travelled since then. And then he came out to ITFA with us a couple of years ago, and really he was. I mean, he's amazing anyway as a man, but he got up on stage and he was running the show. He was incredible. Oh,
so was he hosting it unofficially, even though it wasn't the actual plan?
He essentially, when we were doing our pitching session, he got up and kind of the whole audience fell in love with him and were crying, and we didn't really need to be there at all. He could have just done it all. He was wonderful.
That's fantastic.
I'm actually just going to add to that as well. That I think one of the things that John always said was that this was a very subjective experience of blindness. That he's not trying to speak for all blind people, and I think he saw this. He referred to it on more than one occasion as our film, not just as obviously Peter and James's. All that he was the subject of that film. He felt very much to be a participant of it, and I think that's really important as well when you talk about things like his emotional journey that he went on. That he feels that this is a fair representation of what he went through, but would then look back at it at a distance of 30 years in conversation with his wife, and I think he and Marilyn were almost surprised to see how far that they had come, to actually be reminded of the pain that they went through at that time. And also bear in mind, they just had their first child together. They just got married at the same time as he goes through this life-changing trauma. And I think for them to reflect back on that was a really profound experience.
It's amazing to sort of think about the opportunity to add that extra layer to it. What, like when I watch this, am I going to cry? Like what's going to happen?
Totally, like all the way through.
So it's not like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy at all.
I think what's actually amazing about it is that it is ultimately an uplifting story, and there's no doubt that you'll be weeping like a baby. But I hope in service of actually realising that the relationship was bettered and saved by what they went through together. I'm not really sure what else to add to that. I might cry myself, actually.
Okay, all right, I'll bring tissues, definitely. That's lovely. Is there anything else you can tell us about the way that the choice you made to have it lip synced, and the choice you made to do enhanced sound and things like that? So it feels like you're catering for a lot of different audiences. Can you tell us about any other tech that you've got that's geared toward catering to different audiences?
So obviously we're making a film about blindness, so it needs to be as accessible as possible. So alongside the film, we're producing an impact campaign, which has kind of multiple elements to it. One of which is an Atmos audio mix, which is incredibly immersive and
so there'll be more sound.
Huge amount of sound. So I think that's 360 almost to Atmos.
I think it's 62 speakers.
60. Well, there you go. So that's going to be really immersive, and that's. But also we have created a heightened sound design of the film, which is not just kind of increased Foley and music, etc., etc. It's additional bits of John Hull's narrative. So essentially, as a blind or partially sighted audience member, you can go into the cinema and watch this and hopefully have quite fulfilling experience. And the directors created this by essentially turning the visuals off and just creating a soundtrack that fit with the visuals but was an entire story on its own. And then we've also created, we're working with a wonderful app called Movie Reading, which isn't released yet in the UK. But what we're doing is the app does is it syncs audio description with visuals. So you can go into a cinema, or you can watch TV or video on demand, and whatever film that you've got uploaded on your app, it will sync with what's on the screen. And what we've done is we've added 4 different channels, should we say? So rather than your kind of standard audio description, which is there and brilliant and does its job for many, it's not as popular as you'd think, and only I think 54% of blind and partially sighted people actually use audio description, and around 70 to 80% don't like it. Not to. I mean, we've made a wonderful traditional audio description channel with the wonderful Louise Fryer. But what we've also done is we're building another type of audio description, which is going to be kind of a lot more familiar, and we're going to hopefully use a celebrity to record that.
Have you got a celebrity
for
that yet?
Not yet.
Can I recommend Brian Blessed? Because I think that would be amazing.
There's a beard theme, to be fair. So
that's where I went.
Yeah. But I was actually going to add as well, like a couple of things. Number one, I think that what Jojo's saying kind of encapsulates John's view of blindness, which is that A, his experience was subjective. B, also it's not a binary. You're either sighted or not sighted, obviously. And I think he didn't like audio description at all because he thought it was intrusive and patronising and all those things. But some people really do like it. But I think what we're also trying to do is reconnect the creative part of reaching that audience, rather than it being... Often what happens is you finish your film and you give it to someone else to audio describe or otherwise make available to an accessible audience. Whereas this film has been directed for that audience by the same directors as the
That feels really powerful. It feels like you've got more of like an artistic input into it and control, and you can really make it part of the art of the project. I kind of wish subtitles were like that as well, there was more
we've done the same.
Okay, great.
We've been working with our audio describer, Louise Fryer, from beginning of filmmaking. She was there kind of before we started making the film, so she was at the beginning of the process, and we were also working with Roehampton University, who are kind of cutting-edge subtitle makers, and we're trying out, and we're doing some HOH screenings where we're going to try out different scenes with different types of subtitles, where the subtitles are positioned to where your eye should be, which is quite exciting. But yes.
I was also just going to add as well, like, massive thanks to the BFI, because they have been super behind, like, this incredibly, some would say over-ambitious, I would just say ambitious, sort of attempt to sort of bring a film that really has to be experienced by a blind audience to that audience.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I think over-ambitious is such a... It's like a weird backhanded comment. Well, this is very over-ambitious. It means we're not going to give you the cash to do this. No, that's great that they did, because I think if it weren't ambitious, it would be kind of pointless. I'm visually impaired. Somebody tried to take my glasses off my face at the Devonshire Chippy last night after all the parties, and it was terrifying because I would have genuinely had to stand still until someone drunkenly brought them back and decided they wanted to pretend to be Amy Farrah Fowler off of The Big Bang Theory. It was a very long, convoluted conversation that can only happen in a chippy. But I was petrified, and I use prescription swim goggles and things like that. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing the next iteration of the film. And I'd love to see what the audio describes like and what the subtitles in places that they want your eyes to look would be like. Because I think anything that's immersive like that and can enhance the experience if you've got like multiple impairments or disabilities is really valuable. Like the subtitles were just made too small on BBC iPlayer, which is really frustrating because I use those too. But I'm really fascinated by how you've managed to combine all of these together. And I know that on Tuesday there's the heightened sound version.
This is going to be the world premiere.
So on the 14th at DocFest at 2:45, people will be able to experience the immersive heightened sound version. And the standalone version is at 6 p.m. tonight.
Absolutely.
Brian Blessed isn't on board yet.
No.
But if you guys know him, and do we have any opportunity for a quick question before we finish off? Has anybody got any questions before we end? Fantastic, thank you.
There's more than one version then of this. Is the one version that's specifically for blind people?
Yes. So to that point, so the screening on Tuesday with the heightened sound design, that is, it's very much made with a blind audience in mind. One of the things I would add though is that what we try to do with that is make all of those signposts that help a blind audience not actually exclusive to a sighted audience as well, because one of the things that we really believe is important is that the cinema is a shared experience, and what sometimes happens is that there's a kind of ghettoised experience where people sort of experience AD at home or on a wet Wednesday morning at a cinema, and they don't actually get to go and experience these films at the same time and talk about them with other people. So our aim is very much that screening on Tuesday, there will be, I think it's the Royal Society of the Blind for Sheffield, I think is actually bringing a strong contingent along, but there'll also be sighted people there as well.
Inclusivity is the purpose. So making the app, the idea is that you don't have to go to a special screening. You can sit with your mates or your parents or your family, and it doesn't have to be separate. We can all hang out together.
Fantastic. Any last comments or questions from you guys? Anything else that you two would like to add that we haven't said?
Hope you like it.
Hope you like it, and thanks to DocFest, because we feel massively supported, and just the fact that you were able to put on this extra screening and have this conversation and also show the VR as well, I think shows all the different ways that there are to hear John and Marilyn's amazing story. So thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you very,
Thanks
very
very much, guys, for coming on.